doing today?
I'm doing well. Good evening, Julien. How are things in Paris today?
Things are beautiful here. Am I way too energetic for you in the morning, or you had your first coffee? Are you good?
No, it's okay. I just think of you as Robin Williams in Good Morning Vietnam, so it all works out perfectly.
All right. Well, if you feel good about it, I feel good about it. Now, I need to tell you why I'm super excited today is I know we tend to have this, therapy sessions, just you and me, but I couldn't help. There is a guy I absolutely love to talk with, follow on Twitter, and exchange ideas with, and I felt like I had to invite him to share a therapy session with us because he has a story to share. Do you mind?
I don't mind in the least, especially if you need some help. That's what we're here for, right?
Well, I guess for this story, he may need help, but generally speaking, he is a digital customer service trainer. He's a consultant. He's helping companies like all over the world, giant international companies, consolidate customer trust. So he might need help today. Usually it's him helping other people out. I don't know if you've ever met him before, but let me introduce you to Paolo Fabrizio. Hey, Paolo, how are you doing today?
Hello, Julien and Max. Fine, really. Thanks for having me today.
Well, we are
Great.
excited.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Paolo.
The same for me, Max. Great to hear you and see you.
Well, I've been teasing it a little, so I don't want to keep people waiting any longer. If you don't mind to lie down on our virtual therapy couch, because I know that now Max can't wait any longer to hear your story.
Jumping up and down.
Right. Okay. So I can lay down on the therapy couch as a customer, because we're all customers, of course, and we are. Sometimes we tend to forget we're also customers, the final customer. And I want to tell you about my personal story as a customer that I had a few months ago, purchasing a software. In my job, I need also to invest some money on some specific softwares. So I had some information, some very interesting information over the website, but I need some extra information. And that's very frequent whenever you need to buy or purchase this product or services online. There's always still something missing, the order, delivery time, the expenses, or the other thing that you think at the very moment you're about to say, okay, I'm buying that. So I had the chance to have to use the very good old phone, because I need to explain better. Even though I'm working on digital customer service, I opted in for the phone, and I got an interesting callback by the sales representative who listened carefully to my questions. He replied, and he covered all the few doubts that I had. So I was ready to purchase, and he told me, okay, Are you okay with that? And I say, okay, yes, sure, John. I'm ready to buy that software. So what's coming next? And I thought it was a very simple question to be answered. Okay, he should have been happy, and he was happy indeed. He told me, yes, okay, my colleague will send you an email with all the documents to be signed. And I asked, what about these documents? Well, I don't know. It's, bureaucracy stuff, but I don't work in that department, so I don't know what kind of documents my colleague is going to send you. And this was the first red CX alarm sounding in my mind. So, okay, you did a very great job. You answer all my questions. Now I feel confident that I'm about to do the purchase, but you don't know what your colleague is doing next in order to enable me to keep me or coming on board. And that's not very good. So, I wait for the email, which was really, promptly sent to me. After a couple of hours, I received that email, and it was a very, very short, very, Anglo-Saxon, 2 or 3 lines. That's what I really appreciate, since I mainly have interactions with Italians with 25 lines for an email, which is crazy, absolutely. And having worked many years with the English, I learned to appreciate working and writing very briefly. Anyway, back to the focus. It was very clear. So Jane told me and wrote me, "Here, Paolo, here are all the documents. 4 documents. You need to please, add your signature, sign them back, and send us back, and you're all set." Okay, so I did my job. So I duly signed these documents, and I expected some information. Jane replied and said, "You're all set," but she didn't mention how. where shall I click? Which user and password shall I use? So I wrote her back and say, Jane, can you please add some extra information because I'm very happy to be on board, but I don't know where to go. Oh, yes. Okay. Did my colleague tell you about, what's going on or the user and passwords? No. Oh, I'm so sorry because I can't do that either. What? Yeah, because, this is not my job. This is a technical aspect. So the first guy was a commercial guy. I'm the back office onboarding girl. And then there is a tech, another IT guy. So I was forwarded to the right person who finally gave me the information, but it cost me maybe 4 or 5 extra emails when I thought the job was done. So if I think about the experience, the first experience with the first guy answering all my questions and, washing away all my doubts was great. The second one was not so great because even though the girl, communicated very clearly and briefly, she was not able to tell me what was going next. She thought everything was set, but some information was missing. And the third one did a great job, but he should have not been either involved in this process. So my overall experience was, from 1 to 10 was 6.5. And when you start with a lower level of positive impact, when you buy, at the first moment you need some information or you got an issue, you start emotionally negative.
Agree.
Because you didn't have a great experience. So you said, okay, I got a so-so experience in buying. What shall I expect in case of issues?
Exactly.
So I think this is an example that it touched me emotionally as customer, and also proves one very common issue that I had to face when I worked many years within industries. I used to work many years in insurance companies before moving to the consultancy crazy world when I was over 40. So such a crazy guy. But, at the same time, the issue is the same. So without lack of internal communication, this lack of internal communication reflects undoubtedly towards the final guy, which is the customer experience, the customer in terms of experience. And what we shall tend to underrate as, okay, I need to send an extra mail, or I just needed to ask the customer to do an extra effort. It's a lot.
Absolutely.
In this digital world where we all try to save our time and our efforts, and we reward those brands who enable us to do that. At the same time, we tend to say bye-bye to those brands who let us waste our time or waste our efforts. Yeah. And so I thought it was a very interesting, story in other aspects.
Before we started that session, you told us there would be laugh and there would be tears, and I think you delivered on both. So that's a great start. I don't know, Dr. Bull, what do you think about it?
I agree. I think so far the tears are light, but I think ultimately the tears are going to be for that company. The first thing that strikes me is that something you could have bought on Amazon? And contrast the buying experience to Amazon, right? One click, I've got everything I need. I just, the way the bar is, it just strikes me that they can't get away with that much longer. I mean, if you were buying a house, okay, but it doesn't sound like it was a piece of software or something like that. It shouldn't have been that complicated of an experience. And I have one other question, but Julien, I'll let you kind of feel his feelings out here.
It's going to be a tough one for me because I was trying to take mental notes throughout the story, and every 3 seconds I had something more I wanted to add to it. So I don't think I'm going to cover half of it. But my initial thoughts are, the initial problem you had was not a problem per se, because you didn't have all the answers, which is fine when they are able to provide the answers, which they did, because it's very difficult to build a website that has absolutely every answer to every possible scenario. So I think not such a big deal, especially that you didn't say you had to spend 20 minutes holding the line. So I'm assuming that went pretty fast, pretty smooth.
And they even called him back, which is a great experience.
Yeah.
So pretty fantastic start, but that's where things starts going downhill. The salesperson who can assist you and build confidence and trust, fantastic. I'm not too sure why you picked voice. You said it's because you preferred voice at that time, to explain your question faster than typing it, right? That was the reason behind.
Yeah, the reason is that I had 5 questions, so I didn't want to write, a sort of new book. I already wrote 2 books. I didn't want to, invest. And sometimes when you ask too many questions, and that's very interesting for our, watchers, when you ask too many questions, chances are that you receive partial answers.
Absolutely.
3 out of 5, 2 out of 3.
Agreed.
So that's why I said, okay,
and you
I
didn't
go
want
the
to look
old-fashioned way.
Yeah, I imagine you didn't want to look too Italian either with a 72-page email.
Yes, definitely.
Now
Definitely,
there is a big element around. There are 2 big red flags that I see. The first one is around CES, customer effort score, which very obviously they are not tracking in any way, because the whole burden is on the customer's shoulder. It's for the customer to find where to click, who to call, what to ask, and the customer is building his own journey. It's like playing Lego. As you have to choose the bricks and you have to construct it yourself, and they will help. Apparently, they are helpful. They are nice people, from what I understand. But it's for you to figure out. It's almost like if you had to find their own number of each person and build the journey yourself, which is terrible from a customer effort perspective. Terrible. The second red flag I can see here is in terms of consistency. And that's one theme that comes very often when it comes to customer experience, and even more often when we talk about omni-channel, because the more channels you add, the more silos you could potentially add, and the more complexity. And here they seem to be champions of lack of consistency across channels. So you start your journey, we break everything, we send you to another person, we break everything, we send you to a third person. And ultimately, what they failed at, that would be my analysis here. What they failed is not so much the way the backend is built, but is the way the front end is built. Meaning, if you need 5 people internally to manage the issue, it does not matter as long as there is a single contact person and a seamless communication throughout. And this contact person could get the information internally if that's the way it works. But you as a customer should not have to ask any question. The journey should be written for you, and you should just have to click next, 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 and it should happen automatically. And that's where they fail. Customer experience consistency and what was the first one that I forgot? And customer effort. Those are terrible experiences from what you've been telling us.
Yeah, I think you hit the key word that struck me most, which is silos. It's like 3 different departments, 3 different groups, just a painful throwing over the fence at that point. I would argue there is some back end issue there. It sounds like the systems were completely separate. Is it really that hard to give somebody the forms that you need a specialist to do that? I could see the technical, but even then, it's like, how do I log in? It's not like this was some heavy. I don't know, Paolo. Do you think everything they did? Do you think with the right training, one person could have done that, or do you think it really was pretty complex?
No, I think that each guy, each girl was pretty focused on what they were doing, but from a very responsive instead of proactive approach. So what I usually see also as consultant, that regardless the great tools or the great omni-channel platforms that you may have, if you still rely on old-fashioned responsive approach, you wait for the customer to ask you questions. Well, customers nowadays want to be accompanied hand in hand, but I don't want to be the guy, the adult, and them, the kids. I want to be accompanied. I don't want to become, as Julien said, the James Bond 007 agent trying to find solutions, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise,
So that really
I would
speaks.
ask them for some money back for doing that.
Right. Yeah, your consulting fees because you had to figure it all out. So that really speaks to Julian's point of where's my next button? How do you walk me through this? That makes a lot of sense.
But you mentioned something, Max, that apparently my mind decided to erase from my memory because I found it so terrible. But you brought it back to life. So let me spend 2 seconds on this. They actually ask you to sign up on a website, discuss with them for a digital software, because software, I do imagine it works on a computer. It's not paper and pen. And then they send you a form for you to print, sign, and send back. This is terrible. I mean, 2021, guys. How can we still ask? And every time that happens to me is usually government agencies, and I understand they are 20 years behind the rest of the world. So it's okay. They have the monopoly anyway. You have to go through them. So customer experience is terrible. Well, they can do that. But a software company asking you to sign, to print, sign, scan, or even send by post is even worse. That is not acceptable. That's a no-no. That's usually where I stop working with them.
Yeah, you mentioned two important pillars, negative pillars in this way. So the lack of culture and the lack of processes. So processes are outdated. Okay, still responsive, still waiting for the customers to do the first move. Okay, and at the same culture of transparency, culture based on proactivity, culture based on getting rid of the papers and facilitating and making things simpler for the customers to make their lives easier. So these are, you need to change your mind. You need not just your software or your technology if you want to serve the customer who, as we all have raised the bar very, very much higher in recent couple of years. So I think this is interesting, laughing and crying at the same time, because there's still something to learn. And I don't think this is a lack of training. Lack of training maybe in some answers, when some of them reply, this is, I've done my part from A to C, and from D to F, it's Julian's job, or a Max job. This is not. This is unbearable. Okay,
that is something I was. Yeah. That's something I was thinking throughout your entire story. It's a typical case of not my job kind of situation. And when you build a culture where people can say it's not my job, you're doomed. You know that something is going to happen that's going to kill your business sooner or later. You have to build a culture where even if it's not your job, you care enough to make it happen. And if you stop at your job description, the entire business is going to collapse sooner or later. That's for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely agree.
Absolutely.
Do you feel any better about sharing that story with us today, Paolo?
Much better. Much better, because whenever you have the chance to share some strong emotions, regardless they're positive, negative, or both of them, like in this case, you not feel alone. That's very human. And you learn from feedbacks, because you provided me with other feedbacks. Some of them I already thought before talking to you. Some of them were new, because you got different perspectives, as we're fantastic human beings. So I feel much better now. But I feel at the same time that's very interesting for people as customers who may have found themselves partially involved in similar situations where there is a lack of internal communication, which I think is still the biggest issues in an omni-channel digital customer service world we're living.
I agree. Yeah. Max?
And I think that is the number one thing we see over and over. I tend to think of it in terms of silos, but yeah, a lack of internal communication, things get dropped. This guy doesn't know what that guy's doing. I think if you go through these sessions, that's by far number one root cause of the things we see.
Yeah, we should start making an internal survey and have better communication, Max, to see what is this number one problem that we are facing once we talk about our own experiences. Well,
I'm sorry, I can't talk to you about that.
That's not your job.
That's not my job.
Perfect. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us today, Paolo. I'm thrilled to hear that you feel better about it. We will send you the bill separately, because therapy is extremely expensive, and we will continue doing this for the next 20 years until you feel much better about it.
Is that my address is on Mars, just for your information.
Okay, great,
right?
Great. We'll get the letter up there tomorrow.
Perfect.
Right. So, thanks to you guys for having me, of course.
Thank you so much, Paolo. I will definitely talk to you soon. And Max, I'll see you next week for a new session. Bye-bye, you guys.